Welcome, Keith. Nice to have you.
Oh, glad to be here. I'm excited for what you're doing. Faith, family, flag.
Yeah.
That strikes chord with me as well.
Sweet. Thank you. Yeah, those are the three most important things to me. So that's what I want to talk about.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I've seen and listened to the other people that you've had on the podcast so far, and I don't know how I got lucky enough to be in that group. Maybe you're just getting desperate towards the end, but or at least for where you're at now. But I'm glad to be here and appreciate the opportunity. A lot of amazing folks that you've really tapped into some good, solid discussions with.
I hope it's bringing light to things that are going on in Sanpete and just people in general that are around here.
Absolutely.
So you're new to Sanpete. You've only been here, let's see, like 4 years, 3 years?
Yeah, a little over 3.
Okay.
I've got a little bit of ties to Sanpete. With my mother-in-law has been here for a little over 10 years.
Okay.
When I was born and raised in Utah County, and when we wanted to go snowmobiling in May or June, we would come to Fairview and go up Fairview Canyon. So that was always a resort town for me. And so when I had an opportunity to get back here, just the way that life led, and I think we'll get a little deeper into that in a minute, but was actually thrilled to bits to be here, and it's like a dream come true.
Sweet. Yeah. Well, it's been great having you so far. We were neighbors for a short time. It was awesome. We had some great times. Mm-hmm. So let's start with where you grew up. So you said Utah County. What part?
So I was born in Utah Valley Hospital there in Provo, and lived in Springville for about 15 years.
Okay.
And then we moved all the way over to Orem.
Ooh.
Yeah, right?
That's like 4 schools away.
Well, now it might be like 4 temples away. But
seriously.
It's it was not a big move, obviously, but definitely some things that changed in my family's life. So my dad had worked for someone else for a long time.
Okay.
And when he decided to ultimately go off on his own and decided that he wanted to keep some of the money that he was earning for the other guy, that was a pretty significant, I'll say, like, point of change in my life growing up. And shortly after he made that change, we ended up moving from Springville up to Orem, which was closer to the business, closer to some other friends that had lived in Springville with us. Oh. And yeah, just a good move. And
it's always nice to move with friends, right?
Yeah. We had some people that lived 3 doors up the street, and they decided to move to a budding neighborhood in Orem, just one of those places that's turning from orchards into houses. Mm-hmm. And not too long after that, then we bought a lot that sat there for a little while, and as we worked through finances and my dad's growing business, then ended up building a really nice house there, and that's where I lived up until I got married. So
sweet. And so 15, you would have been like a sophomore in high school-ish?
Yeah, I switched right at the changeover for high school, so in Springville and I think in Orem at the time. So we had K through 5 in elementary school. We had a middle school at 6 and 7 in Springville, and then junior high was 8th and 9th. And then after my 9th grade year is when we moved. We were already building the house, so there was a little while that we commuted from Springville over to Orem at the start of my sophomore year. But
gotcha.
that was the changeover, so kind of clean spot in the middle of the year.
Yeah, that's nice. I've moved a lot in my life too, but I don't feel like it was ever in clean moments of time. It was just kind of like, hey, it's time to move.
Well, we got spoiled a little bit there, but yeah, Springville was it's obviously, like everywhere, it's not the same as it used to be.
Yeah.
We lived in a tiny little subdivision that was built out in the middle of the field away from the rest of the town that has since been totally swallowed up by houses. But a lot of my childhood time was spent on a bike or rollerblades. We could go out and be on the street and set up our street hockey goals, and we could ride out the neighborhood and be up in the mountains effectively, where we had some couple bike trails and some sledding hills, and good time.
Sweet. So, yeah. Kind of that urban, like suburban, I guess. Growing up.
We'll call the suburb of the mighty town of Springville.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So then you moved to Orem, graduated high school from Orem High, I'm guessing?
Oh, ouch. No. Oh. No, definitely no. Mountain View. I'm a Bruin.
Mountain View. Oh, okay.
So Timpanogos actually didn't exist when I started.
Oh, okay.
The first year of Timpanogos High School was my junior year.
Gotcha.
So there were a few people that I went my sophomore year with that were moved over to
Okay.
Vinogus. So that was new right at that time. But yeah, we graduated to Bruin. I was just a little bit away from, I lived about a mile away from the school there. And
Cool. And so then, did you go to college after that, or what happened after high school?
I did. I went to BYU Provo. Should probably give a little bit more about my life as I kind of got into high school. I worked for my family business. So when my dad went off on his own, it started off with just him, and this will play into a little bit more about who I am and what I'm doing now a little bit later. But he started his own business. It was just him doing the technical work. My mom stepped in to help with a lot of administrative things, answering phones, doing paperwork, and it didn't take very long before they had plenty of work, and they were pulling in the kids to start helping with things. So I was probably 11 or 12 by the time I started to get pulling in, and then I ended up working for the family business up until I moved. So
Okay.
Which I moved to Arizona in 2005. So that was
And
probably,
what was the job like? What was the work? The
so the
business?
family business was Keith's TV and Electronics Service. So they repaired consumer electronics.
Okay.
A lot of that industry is dead today. You just throw stuff away and buy a new one with the prices that things are. But back in the day when, a TV was a piece of furniture, and it took 4 guys to get it out of a basement that people decided to build it into before they finished the walls and some of those kind of things. So I started there just filing papers, like closed invoices we'd put in the filing cabinet, and that was the first thing I started doing. Eventually I graduated, if you will, and kept getting a little bit more responsibility with answering phones and running errands, cleaning things up. I actually used to disassemble old TV antennas to turn in for scrap aluminum to get a few extra bucks.
Cool.
And then once I got a little more involved in the business and understood the people side of things, I got heavily involved in what we'd call warranty claims processing. So half of the work that our business did was stuff that had failed under warranty, whether
Gotcha.
it's a 1-year manufacturer's warranty, 5-year extended warranty, something like that. We'd had to file all that paperwork in order to get paid. So I did a lot of that for quite some time. Each of the kids kind of seemed to go through different aspects of that, and it almost went through a progression. After that, I got to actually start doing a little bit more of what I really enjoyed, and that was some of the technical aspects. I learned how to solder and was replacing defective parts on circuit boards, and eventually learned how to troubleshoot and do that, do the whole side of the repair instead of just someone else with a brain would figure it out, and then we just follow instructions to fix it.
Sure. Yeah.
But I got to the point where I did a lot of the troubleshooting, and once I got old enough that it wouldn't be appalling for a 16-year-old kid to show up at your door and fix your TV, then I was actually able to get on the truck as well, and so
Cool.
I've been to a lot and heard of lots of small towns in Utah that most people haven't ever, if they haven't been there, because we go all over the place to do that kind of stuff.
Sweet.
But yeah, so that was ultimately got to a point where as I was going through college doing that, then, well, I'm going to step back just a little bit. So in high school, I did not do any extracurricular activities. I did City League baseball because my dad was a real big baseball fan. I actually did a little bit of gymnastics before that my dad wasn't quite as bit of a fan of because it, what's the word I'm looking for? Like imposed on my baseball career.
Gotcha.
But we figured out how to make both work. But yeah, I didn't do a lot of extra curricular stuff because any time outside of school was working in the family business.
Yeah.
Once I got into college, I did serve a mission for my church. So after high school, I had 1 year at BYU and then went on a mission to Poland and then came back, continued school at BYU until I graduated there. That first year before my mission was like my worst year of school ever. It was really easy for me to get straight A's through most of school. But when I went to college, that was a little bit of a reckoning for how to actually learn and think things that challenged me a little bit more. And then I also had my dad trying to pull me into the business.
Sure,
so
yeah.
my father did not graduate from college. he did something similar, that he went to first year, and after that he decided that he liked skiing a lot and spent a lot of time at Sundance. And ultimately, for what he was doing and in his business, that wasn't something that he ended up needing. He was able to do really well, especially going off on his own. And so he felt the same way about me, like, I didn't need this, you don't need this. So there was a little bit of pressure to skip class to come help out more at work. And when my grades started to drop pretty significantly, I pushed back on that a little bit. The mission kind of came at a good time to give me a little bit of a reset. When I came back from my mission, it's like, no, I've got to keep this up. I lost a scholarship because my grades weren't good enough first year. But got back into it and did a whole bunch of things going through college that, as I continued working in the family business, I remembered thinking, why am I doing these things? Like, some of these things really don't apply, and they're like really hard. And when am I ever going to use thermodynamics and all other kinds of things when I wasn't using to fix TVs or whatever? So there's lots of things that I wondered there. But then as I got close to finishing college, I had a job offer that came from, it was actually made to one of my lab partners in college, that through a friend of a friend, neighbor kind of thing, was looking for someone to work on electronics. And my lab partner basically said, I'm more of a software guy. Looks like you're looking for a hardware thing. You need to talk to my partner. So
handy.
Yeah. So I basically got handed a job offer on a silver platter that would have taken me away from the family business. And my parents weren't happy about that. I did end up taking that job offer. Really felt actually very strongly impressed from the good Lord above that was the thing that we needed to do for our family. I had actually built a house as I was going through college, and after I got married about a year after I got back from my mission to my high school sweetheart. So we dated in high school, and she made sure really well while I was gone that I was the best thing around when she came back. There were several times along through my mission that looked like she was long gone and I was out of the picture, and it ultimately didn't end up that way. So
perfect.
We've been married for 23 years now. So
dang, got a few on me.
Couple maybe. Where you at?
I'm at like 17, 18, something like that.
Once you get past the first few, it feels like almost the same.
It's the same.
I'd ask how old you are, but I think ever since I got to about 25, I just pretty much assume everyone is my age. So they could be 10 years younger than me. I guess if they're past that, kind of into their 20s, then they're pretty much my age. So,
right. Yeah. I'm right around your age.
Yeah. I'm 45 right now. I'm pretty sure we're the same age. Pretty sure your parents are actually also about my age too.
Probably pretty close.
Yeah. I mean, we interact the same way. So interesting societal things. That's the way I view the world. And just
it's totally how it is though. Like when you're talking to people, you're like I have coworkers that have gray hair, and I have coworkers that I know are younger than me. And I'm like, we talk the same. We pretty much interact the same. So is age really that big of a difference? Like, it's not really, it doesn't really matter.
At this point, no. Yeah. And a lot of different things there. So when I ultimately took that job, my parents were devastated because we had just built a house. Like at some point when my wife and I got married, her mom was a real estate agent, and we were looking at buying a condo because we thought we understood the value of getting into some piece of real estate because it appreciates and all those wonderful things that you'll hear real estate agents say that generally are true for investment purposes. But my dad had an idea. He's like, hey, I've got this other piece of land over here. We could subdivide it and you could build a house on it for the same price that you would buy a condo with. You could build a house, and that was around $100,000 to $150,000 at that time.
Dang.
Right?
How'd that be?
Yeah. And that house is probably worth around $700,000 today, I think.
Dang.
But unfortunately, it's not still mine. Yeah. No. So with that, in order to do that, we had rented the ground from my dad. He's like, you can pay me rental for the ground. We can use it as a down payment to figure out the financing for things. And ultimately, when we decided to move, we figured, like, I've never like if the goal was always for me to take over the family business. I mean, even after all, I am Keith. I should take over Keith's TV and electronics business, right?
It makes sense.
And so that was my plan, my family's plan. And then when we came along and said, hey, we're going to take this other job in Arizona, we kind of figured 2 to 5 years, 2 years probably, 5 years tops.
Yeah.
If I've never even been in a job interview, so if I'm going to run a company, I might like go through the process. And there were a lot of other processes that I wanted to go through as well. But I could give lots of logical reasons, but really the biggest one was that we felt like that was absolutely what the Lord wanted us to do. Right. And we can look back on that and see the Lord's hand in everything that we've had since then. I absolutely would not be who I am today without that choice, as well as several others that have followed it. Yeah. So when we talk about faith, I really believe that if a decision's important, the Lord will let us know if we're looking for his advice.
And it doesn't matter how long it takes you to realize it.
Yeah.
He'll keep telling you.
Yeah, who knows how long he was prodding me before that. I've never even thought of looking back at it that way. But by this time, it was really important because he was really stepping in. Yeah. And so we did take that job, moved down to Arizona. And, you talk about the age thing. I had taken this job to work in these electronics. So that company worked in the semiconductor industry. They repaired vacuum pumps, which there was 2 main kinds that they worked on. One was it's called a cryogenic pump, which they operate at about minus 450 degrees Fahrenheit, which back to that physics that I thought in thermodynamics that I didn't think was all important. That became important really fast after taking that job. But the other kinds of pumps that they did were turbomolecular vacuum pumps that were magnetically levitated turbines. So no physical contact. It's all electronics held up by magnets with a fancy sensor network and some pretty impressive controls.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Are these like big? Or are they like super small or?
Both. So, I mean, like a smaller maglev pump would probably be about 6 inches wide. A larger one would probably be closer to 18 to 24 inches wide.
What are they?
Probably
a
foot or two tall. So
what do they pump?
So they are what's used to create the vacuum environment in wafer manufacturing. So when you take silicon and turn it into, which is sand, turn it into glass, turn it into a cylinder, cut it into small discs that are what your microchips are basically. Yeah. So they make your microchips off of silicon wafers. One wafer would have dozens or hundreds, depending on the size of the wafer, of microchips on it, and then they put those in a package that is what people see when they get when they look at a computer chip. You see a black box that has lots of little legs. That's a packaged chip, but if you open the package, you'll see a little tiny square that's really shiny and has millions and millions of transistors on it, and things all networked and built together through the process. The process of semiconductor manufacturing is incredible. Yeah. And the vacuum pumps are really just used to have the environment that they're manufactured in. So it's a completely
required
closed.
That it has to be that way.
Yeah. A speck of dust is looks like an atom bomb dropped on one of these things. And so everything's got to be super clean, but also then the chemicals used for etching processes or sputtering or ion implantation, all of the things that they're doing to create these, to manufacture the semiconductors, all has to be done in a vacuum. Gotcha. And so these vacuum pumps would kind of run to fail, was kind of what happened in the industry. And so they would be on a tool for several years, and once they kind of built up enough particulate, they'd start to get out of balance, or if the electronics would fail, that of course would cause a failure. And in that industry, downtime, depending on what manufacturer was working on at that time, was between $10,000 to $100,000 an hour. Wow. That would cost the company that these tools aren't running when they should be. And so having everything working great was really important. And if I would have had any idea what I was getting into when I took that job, I probably would have said no if I was smart, because I was the electronics that they wanted me to learn. I worked in TV and electronics. We had all the support of all the manufacturers. We had service manuals, prints. If we couldn't figure something out, we could call an 800 number and talk to an engineer at the factory that would help us troubleshoot. This stuff was all built in Japan, and they had figured out how to get some documentation that had Japanese notes all over
right,
it.
Yeah.
But generally, we had no documentation, and the company saw us, like the company that made them saw us as competition, so they didn't want to help us at all. So we pretty much had to reverse engineer everything.
Wow.
I did not have that level of skill set myself, and I think God knew that, because when I showed up for my first day of work, there was another guy that was there that I didn't recognize. He was like 72 years old, and he was an electrical engineer that had just finished a service mission. And when I asked, just started getting to know him a little better, he explained that he was just hired and described my job. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, someone else got hired instead of me, but I'm still here. What's going on? And went and talked to the boss, and he explained that no, like we figure we got enough work for more than one of you. And so, we got this guy too. And so his name was Jack Price, one of the best mentors I've ever had. He was 72 years old when I was 25, and he was incredibly good with theory and electromagnetism and all the things that I really had no experience coming into. And I had my own set of strengths that was a little bit different in our partnership. I really liked pushing buttons and finding out what happens when you do something.
Right.
Enough that it made him a bit nervous, but the two of us combined actually did really well together. And in a very short amount of time, we were able to help the company make a lot of significant gains in their electronics capabilities, which really was Jack and I doing that. We got busy enough that we continued to hire other people that we would teach the things that we knew so that we could then move on to the next challenge. And it was 6 years there at Texas Capital Semiconductor of moving from one challenge to the next and just being able, and I couldn't tell you how many times I decided that my boss was a really good man, because I was pretty sure that I wasn't worthy of the type of blessings and inspiration that I was getting to help solve a lot of these problems.
Yeah.
So I grew significantly in ways that I absolutely would not have. I probably would have failed in that position if my boss wouldn't have hired Jack to put the two of us together, because he filled in things that I needed, and vice versa. Over as we continued working different projects there, we just kept tackling one thing after another, and we ended up using the electronics that were in these pumps not just to fix them, but then we actually started looking at their signals to detect imbalance in the pumps. So when you've got a rotor spinning, it vibrates according to how much imbalance it has, which also correlated to the end of life of the pumps.
Right, yeah.
So we would then use that information to basically monitor vibration levels, and we designed our own electronics to integrate with those controllers, and then we would make reports from those that we would then give to so we do active monitoring on the pumps in the fabs, and then give reports to our clients to say, hey, you know what, you might want to keep an eye on this one, or the next time you have planned maintenance, you should plan on changing out that pump, which is an expensive thing to do, so they don't like to do if they don't have to. But our data was really good, and so the first time that they said, for the first few times they did it and thought great and whatever, moved on, and of course some guy, to his credit, somewhere decides, these guys rebuild pumps for a living. Could they be telling us to do this sooner than it needs, so that they get more money, more business? Well, let's not change the next one that they tell us to change and see what happens. And I don't know that he had any devious views, or if he was just wanting to test the knowledge, which that's something I would do. So they decided not to change the next pump, and at the end of their preventative maintenance, where they had done all the chamber cleaning and everything else, they went to start the pump back up and it wouldn't run. And so they called us right back, and they're like, hey, we didn't get this pump changed out, and it's not running, but it's the end of our maintenance period, or we're at the end of our window. Can you come change out a pump immediately? Which then, ultimately ended up costing them a couple $100,000. Well, no, sorry, couple tens of thousands for this customer.
Yeah.
For being down an extra 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, it also got them some knowledge, though.
Yeah, and they're like, okay, actually, these guys do know what they're doing. So we had a litmus test, and it passed, and they trusted us from there on out. And we didn't even need to sell our products after that. Like, industry news goes around the industry, and they're like, hey, we started using these guys for this, and this is what it's done for us. And our presentations were moved to be minimally our content of what we're doing and how we're doing it. And then we started putting a bit more in the presentation of, and here's the first people that we did this for, and here's what they had to say about it.
Gotcha.
And they were totally okay with that. They're like, yeah, like everyone should be operating this way.
And I can't imagine there's like a big market in that either. Like there's probably only a few chip manufacturers in the United States. Like it's not like car salesmen.
Definitely not like a car salesman thing. And electromagnetic bearings are in a few other industries. Oil and gas is probably the next biggest one. I started looking that way when it came time for me to make a move. I left that company ultimately because my family was growing and my bills were growing with that, but my paycheck wasn't really growing.
Yeah.
And so I had proposed a few different ways to my boss of things that we could do to have the company make more money so that he could afford to give me a raise. Because I don't really feel good about saying I need a raise because I have a bigger family and I need more money. Right. It needs to be value-based, right? Like I need to be able to give the company something more in order to ask for something more. And he kind of had an approach that, you know, well, if we give you a raise, and we got to give everyone a raise. And I'm like, yeah, you could afford to do that if you, if you
more revenue,
if you do these other things. But it's like, you actually, Keith, we've known for a little while that you'd be worth more to someone else than what we can pay you here. And so we've kind of seen this day coming, and we've appreciated you as long as we have had you, and we'd love to have you even longer, but we understand if you need to do something different. So, wow. Yeah, it was really surprising, actually. I had a few people that worked at that same company that basically said, if you couldn't get a raise, like, ain't no way the rest of us are getting one. Let me know if you find any other opportunities. And I wouldn't necessarily try and recruit anyone out, but I did have a couple of guys that followed me when I left and actually went to my next venture was engineering at Sub-Zero. And I actually got that job probably because in my interview I used a portfolio that I demonstrated what we did with this predictive monitoring system, and basically said, you know what, we started this from scratch and built this. And they're like, oh, good. We build test systems for new refrigerators that we're designing and production and manufacturing testing, and we improve the stuff that we have, and that's exactly the kind of stuff that we need. You're hired, you know.
Sweet.
It worked out really well, and then I had a lot more opportunities there working at Sub-Zero. I started out as a test engineer. Within the first year, I had some other technician direct reports underneath me. Within another year or two, I was basically managing the group at that factory, and then started interfacing a lot more with the corporate headquarters up in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And eventually ended up operating. The company had a little bit of a restructuring into business units. You know, different brands had different business units or different product lines, and I was responsible for the under counter product line, 24-inch wide by counter height refrigeration, wine coolers, that kind of stuff. I was responsible for all of that and had about a little over 100 direct and indirect reports.
Dang.
At managing all aspects of the business, which was really awesome. I appreciated that experience. Then COVID hit, and there was a bit more restructuring after that. And my business unit got combined with another one, and then I went back to managing engineering. With some of those other corporate changes, what used to be a really incredible small family business environment at Sub-Zero, even though there's 6,000 employees, started to move a lot more towards like corporate stock held things.
Right.
And Sub-Zero is privately owned; it's not held by stock, but some of the ways that they were running some things were switching, and with that came not only the good, but there was some other bad things that happened there, that certain people that play politics and that kind of stuff, a few things that I ended up actually leaving based on some of the things that happened there. But again, like, I absolutely loved my time at Keys TV. I wouldn't be who I am without the things I learned there. I was able to use that to get my next job at Texas Capital Semiconductor. Same thing, absolutely loved that job. Most of the people that were there would, including myself, if you could live off of meager wages, you'd stay there forever because the culture and environment was so good.
Yeah.
Going into Sub-Zero was very similar. Got a lot more learning opportunities that built off of the previous ones. I can just look back and see all these changes that the Lord had in my life. Gave me each of these opportunities. When I was leaving TCS, I had another job opportunity in California, and my wife was so excited to get out of Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of our passwords for social media account was "Buy Arizona." Like, we were ready to go, and then the Sub-Zero thing ended up working out. That, again, that was another very strong spiritual impression. It's like, actually, no, like, I know California looks glamorous and
Mm-hmm.
the pay's good over there, but this is where I need you next. In that time, I, like, both at TCS and at Sub-Zero, in those times, I also continued to grow with responsibilities that I had in the church as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've served in several bishoprics. There was another time that I was looking at getting my master's degree, that we were fully accepted to the program, ready to go,
Mm-hmm.
pay the bill online for the first semester, and it just didn't work. And I kind of paused for a minute and had another impression from above that's like, this is not for you right now. And then not too many months later, I got a call into the bishopric. And I was 29 years old then.
Wow.
Like, which in Utah, that would be young for
Yeah.
that kind of a calling in the church. But in Arizona, it's not
Yeah,
quite as
outside of Utah,
it's not quite
more
as
common. That's
extreme
true.
of a thing. But it definitely took a lot of time
Mm-hmm.
between my work and my family and my calling. If I was in the middle of, it would have been a double master's degree for MBA and also in engineering. And I look back and think, that could have torn our family apart. I don't know how I would have managed all those things. Some people do, but we felt like that wasn't the right thing. I mean, it's another one of those things we look back on and think, oh, yep, God let us know when we needed to that wasn't the thing.
Yeah.
Still haven't gone back for a master's. Don't know if I ever will, but if I have a feeling if I need to, it'll show up.
Yeah,
So
it'll come around.
yeah, just lots of experiences with kind of who I've become professionally over all of that has gotten me to that point in my engineering career, management, leadership.
So you made some sort of software mixed with hardware to detect wobble in pumps,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm sure that, so I come from information security background, and I come from like securing ICS things, which that would be an ICS thing. And
Yeah, the people
first
in the fab weren't really excited to let data go out of a fab
Yeah.
because we had our central servers that we wanted to report those systems
Right.
to. So I graduated in IT from BYU. That was my degree.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So fortunately, I had a lot of understanding for networking and firewalls, and I was able to have the needed discussions with the IT groups for
Which is
companies
good.
like Intel, Freescale, Semiconductor, Microchip. These groups that we use these things for. I was able to have those technical discussions with them that otherwise that type of project would have been dead in the water.
Yeah. And I know this probably would have been, the timing on this would have been probably prior to what you did, but when Stuxnet became big, were you like, whew, because it didn't affect you, or did it have an effect on anything that you were running on your ICS stuff? Are you familiar with Stuxnet?
I'm not familiar with Stuxnet.
Okay, so that was it was a deal that the NSA and Israel got together, and they made a virus that infected. So it was only supposed to infect. They put it on a thumb drive and they dropped it in Iran, and it was supposed to infect the centrifuges, and that's what it did. So what it did is the centrifuge to refine the uranium would spin, and it would start to wobble because it was wearing out, and this virus would continually increase the speed of the centrifuge while giving a report that everything is staying the same and that everything is good. Until it eventually
so they would
broke
self-destruct.
They self-destructed all the centrifuges, and I think this happened like early 2000s, so it would have been prior to this, but like it inevitably and accidentally infected like 75% of the world. So, but it was only built to attack those centrifuges specifically. So even when you had Stuxnet on your computer or Stuxnet on anything else, it was just like benign and did nothing.
Yeah,
because it didn't have the right code, but
we probably, assuming that would have been a thing that could have gotten in there otherwise, I'd like to think that we would have somewhat been immune. So the way that we interacted with, worst case scenario, if our system didn't work, they would just keep running the way they were. They'd run to fail and stuff would break.
Yeah, everything would just be.
But a pump dying is not the same as a centrifuge dying, obviously.
Yeah.
in our situation, we were passively monitoring signals that were the same things that the controllers themselves were looking at, and then running some software on to decide if they should shut down or not allow themselves to run further. And then we were sending that to something else. So don't know that it would have been the same type of a risk. There were a number of things that we did have to juggle around from an engineering standpoint. I mean, it's nice to be able to run wires from one thing to another. I got a dose of fiber optics before fiber optics was really a big deal.
Sweet.
Because in these ion implanters, like the actual system that's doing the ion implantation is sitting at around between 120 to 180,000 volts. And so that whole system is isolated from the outside with big lead shields and doors that if they ever open, the whole system shuts down. I learned at that point that it takes about 10,000 volts for electricity to jump 1 inch. And so if you had something that could run at 180,000 volts, that nothing can be close to within 18 inches of it. And that's where the big lead walls were. And in order for our system to then become part of that, but then communicate outside of it, I had to change all of my networking from our typical Ethernet stuff to fiber optics, so that we could have a non-conductive,
passive
communication to get from inside the system to outside the system. So we're probably boring any of your listeners to absolute tears with this stuff.
I don't care. This is what I do.
It's nice to have someone who appreciates it.
Yeah.
So I don't really get to have a lot of those conversations with folks.
Yeah, I actually ran fiber into my office in here from my TR downstairs.
Yeah, I mean, the benefits of fiber obviously are way more than just the fact that it's a non-conductive piece of material.
Yeah, but speed of light, things moving at the speed of light.
There's something going on with that. They got a thing. That guy who invented light, I think he knew what he was doing.
Right? Cool. So to Sub-Zero, and then from Sub-Zero, COVID, and then you left Sub-Zero.
Yeah, so I stayed there for a little bit longer. In 2022 is actually when I started looking for other opportunities, which that was kind of in the thick of everything was still frozen with COVID. I had a couple opportunities to leave Sub-Zero that actually, one of them was with family and up here that's in Lehigh now, and the Lord, we didn't see anything at the time that was a red flag, but the Lord just let us know, hey, you know what, like this isn't the right opportunity, so we didn't take it. I do have to laugh a little bit because, as we got to the end of that, or as I continued to work at Sub-Zero and continued to look for other opportunities, we looked for ways to get back up to Utah Valley, or at least back up to Utah, and we'd been looking for that for the entire time that we'd been down there. We ultimately were down there for 17 years after we said 2
to 5.
5 max.
Yeah, 17's pretty close to that.
Yeah, pretty close, right? There was a little bit of foreshadowing, actually. One of the last service calls I did before I left Keith's TV, when I was moving to Arizona, someone had just moved into a house. We were fixing their TV, and she's like, yeah, we've been in Arizona for the last 20 years, and we had actually planned to go down there for like 1, maybe 2 years. And 20 years later, we just came back and was like, interesting. It's not going to happen to me. I thought about that every year that I was in Arizona. But we looked for engineering opportunities up here. I applied for a lot of jobs. Nothing really came to fruition that we felt good about, I should say. And then at the end of, it would have been, I guess, around the end of 2021, my wife's mother, so my mother-in-law, the one that lives here in Mount Pleasant, and 2021 was a really, really good year for real estate, as most people are aware that pay attention. And she had made an awful lot of money, and she's like, look, I need help with this. Like, I've got so much work to do, more work than I can do, and I need help. And Keith would be an incredible real estate agent. And she was having these conversations with my wife, and I'm like, yeah, no, that's not me. I spent my whole life not really caring for real estate agents, and a good portion of that even was, they were just, I won't go there, but there was I'd had a lot of bad experiences with real estate agents.
Sure.
And I'm guessing that lots of people understand that. And being a real estate agent now, I market myself as the real estate agent for people who don't like real estate agents.
Yeah.
but at the time, like, I was not considering it at all. They tried. I said no several times. I explained to my wife several times about why this wasn't what it really looked like. Not to mention, I hate sales. I still do.
Sales are rough for me. I'm not a salesman.
Yeah, as an engineer, I had a lot of salespeople that, especially when I had, multi-million-dollar budgets, had a lot of salespeople that wanted to come solve problems that I didn't have. And so they'd try and help me understand that I did have them, and why their solution was the thing that I needed to spend the money on. Then I had other salespeople, I'll call them salespeople. I think they actually went by the title of application engineer, and maybe that was just to help people like me that didn't like salespeople. But an application engineer is someone who says, we have this product, you have an application, how about we engineer an opportunity for our product to help you solve a problem in your application. And in those situations, I loved those guys. They had all the answers. Like, they could help me get something implemented 2 or 3 times as fast as if I was doing it on my own. And then we wanted to buy more of their stuff, go figure, and deploy it, more widely and in more production settings. And that means even more money and more products. And so in that way, it was like, oh, like, if we're in the business of problem solving, can't have enough problem solvers. I mean, I guess it's possible to get too many cooks in the kitchen, but when they're all contributing at good levels, that kind of stuff I'm all about. And again, those guys were application engineers, not salespeople. So
yeah,
that
is a lot better. I always enjoy. I'd rather talk to there's always a sales team. You get the salesman, and then you get the engineer, and I'd rather talk to the engineer 9 times out of 10. Like, the sales guys are great, they're probably fine guys and nice and whatever else, but they just aren't going to give me any answers that I want. And they're just going to
they'll help you with the invoicing. They'll work out some of those financial details. Even when I worked with TCS, I was in front of customers a lot, and they actually called people in my role a salesperson, because we were ultimately selling, but we were selling through problem solving. Our engineers worked with their engineers to help them solve problems. And then there was another guy that was always right there with me, whose job was to pay for lunch afterwards when we went out. And they took care of the business things, but we had a good team between someone who was strictly sales and understood little of the technical details, and then another technical expert alongside. So,
well, I guess that's why salesmen make so much money, because it's not like a very desirable thing to be doing. It's difficult.
I believe salespeople make so much money because sales is what really drives everything else. Without the sales, that engineer doesn't have a job.
That's true.
And the engineer can solve all the problems he wants. If it's not valuable to another business and helping businesses interact with each other or with consumers, then that sales guy doesn't have a job. The shipping guy doesn't have a job. The person who answers phones doesn't have a job. Like, sales, and that's one of the things I've kind of slowly learned, I guess, is sales is absolutely critical. And the sales guy makes way more money than the engineer. And one could argue that it takes more technical knowledge to be an engineer than to be a salesperson. It's a different kind of job, obviously, but the sales guy controls a lot more how much money moves.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's one of the things that, I mean, I'm now effectively in sales as a real estate agent, and I get paid according to how much volume I move. If I sell 20 houses, I make twice as much as if I help someone sell 10 houses. As an engineer, I could be was the most valuable guy on my team year over year, and that meant that if bonuses were good, I might get a little bit better one. But my raise might have been, 4 to 5%, where, the average person's raise was 2 to 3%. And that's really that takes a long time to build income and wealth when you're only growing at that small of a rate. I mean, 2 to 3% is, you're keeping up with inflation, basically.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, in the right markets.
And that's actually, so just to be 100% clear, I don't view salesmen bother me, but it's a different skill set.
It is absolutely different.
And so, like, to say someone is more intelligent as an engineer or as a salesman, they're a different field, and they both can be as intelligent as the other. And that's how I view most of my sales teams that I deal with and stuff, is like the salesman is good at his job because that's his wheelhouse. The engineer is good at his job because he's technical.
Yes.
He has technical proficiency. And so, and I do agree that sales is probably the most important thing to any business.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing works without sales.
I loved your episode with Lloyd. That he touched on that really, really. Guys, you should go back and listen to that. If you're listening to this now, you need to go listen to the episode with Lloyd. Like, that is what drives the business.
Yeah.
It's what makes it so that we have problems to solve and so that we have resources to be able to solve them.
Yep.
And it's easy to give salespeople a bad rap because there's some aspects that they're an easy target. Honestly,
Totally.
You can say the same thing about a lot of engineers too.
Yeah.
But in reality, I think someone who has a bad taste in their mouth for sales, it comes back to expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And so the phrases that I like to go back to is, did they overpromise and underdeliver,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is, we don't have our expectations met, and that's when people don't like sales guys. So, you hear about a used car salesman that talked up a vehicle, and then you drove it off the lot, realized that it was less than what you thought.
Mm-hmm.
And now you don't like used car salesmen, and they have a reputation that is there for a reason. Attorneys and politicians make lots of promises, and we hear what we want to, and then when it doesn't work out the way that we thought, then we view those people as dishonest, and they may or may not have been in a given moment. They may or may not have had their hands tied. Like, if we're looking for understanding, there's probably actually a lot of really good reasons for why things happen the way they do, and they probably aren't just because certain people in certain professions are truly devious.
Right. And there's two sides to every story, and that's the thing. Like, we're only hearing one side 90% of the time.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't know what the other side is.
We're not in the back rooms of that stuff, and even when corruption isn't a thing in some of those places, there are still other things that are happening that are relevant facts. That when the same people, I say a lot that we're all smart people. If we all have the same information, then we would most likely be making the same decision.
Yep.
And I think that's true in a lot of those spheres as well. On the other side, if you underpromise and overdeliver, then someone felt like they were getting way more value than what they expected, and they love that sales guy.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the guy that, he helped me solve a problem, and I saw a solution to one problem, and then when we solved 10, it's like, I just want this guy next to me as much as possible, because he's going to see something that I'm not, and I want that as part of my team.
Yeah.
And that's the side of things that has really played into me ultimately becoming a real estate agent. Back to that story, I guess. So, my mother-in-law was pushing that. My wife was working for her as an assistant and graphic designer. And so they had a lot of conversations that I wasn't around for. And then my wife started pushing me on that. And I had some heavy church callings at the time. And my wife kept saying, you should look into this. You should look into this. And I was like, still, no, like that, I could never do that. I don't respect those people. Like, that's not going to, and I think my judgments might be a little harsh, but now that I'm in it, I joke that I do see that there are great people in the industry. But some of those prior beliefs I had are also cemented even deeper. So there's the real estate agents make sure that you're using a great real estate agent, and then you're in good shape.
Yeah.
Just like anything else, there's mediocrity and less than mediocrity, whether it's doctors or lawyers or, lots of, like, those are things that I always thought, if someone's a doctor, they got to be close to perfect, super smart people. Well, there's actually mediocre doctors too, I've since learned. So where was I going with that?
We were talking about your move up to Sanpete, I think.
Oh yeah. So my wife was so interested in it. I was like, that she said, I will give you time outside of work, which, she was previously complaining about me not being around enough because work and church callings and other things that I'm doing with my time. And she's like, I will make sure that you have the extra time to go through the 120 hours of coursework to get your license, if you'll do it. And so when it became that important to her to sacrifice that time on her side, then I took it and said, okay, I would be irresponsible and a bad husband not to do this at this point, at least to look into it, at the level that you're asking. So I got my license. I ended up using actually like 4 weeks of PTO with Sub-Zero to come up to Utah, work with my mother-in-law, and pretend I was a realtor. And right about that time was actually when the interest rates fell. Interest rates rose. So 2022, back when we used to all have 2 and 3% interest rates, and now we're talking 6 and 7s. That change started actually while I was on that trip. I actually enjoyed the work that I was doing with my mother-in-law. She was a great mentor, and she was telling me all the time how awesome I would be at this, and and you just did that, and that's going to work out so well, and you'd be so good at this. And she was just like trying to make me feel really good about myself. But ultimately, I had fun and I enjoyed it. And we got another strong impression actually in the middle of those 2 weeks. Like, hey, now's the time. So my wife ended up going back in the middle of those 2 weeks and prepping our Arizona house for sale. And then we ended up having our house on the market and under contract less than a month from that time. Well, I continued to do that. And that was a tough decision because there was a lot of things that, yes, my mother-in-law told me, you're not going to have to sell. You're not going to have to find clientele. I just need to help me do the work. But in that time, with interest rates rising, half of her buyer pool dropped literally within a week. They just said, you know what? I can no longer afford the house that would have made it worth it for me to sell this one and move into another one. So I'm just going to stay here. And we see that, the effects of that still today, 3 years later, that, if someone's got a 2% mortgage, then it's pretty tough to sell that house and buy another one when you got to take it at 6%.
Yeah.
Like I have one of the houses that I have for sale right now has a seller financing option available for 3%. And the same payment that you would make with that 3% interest rate versus a 6 3/4% interest rate is the difference in buying a $450,000 house at 6 3/4% or a $650,000 house at 3%.
Right. Yeah, you're like $200,000 in mortgage.
Yeah, there's a huge difference in buying power between those things. And so that's, people still continue to work on those decisions. A lot of people would look at me and say, you're a fool because why would you dump it? Like, you could have decided to jump into real estate in 2008 too. Why didn't you do that? Like, jump in, basically the fact that I'm jumping in at a horrible time in the market. Right. And then I had other people like, wow, that's bold. And if you can survive and succeed this, you'll survive anything that the market will ever throw at you again. And right now, I'm having my best year ever, continues to get better year over year. And I attribute that to the way that I'm working, the things that I'm doing that, differentiate me over experiences that people have had with other real estate agents. Sure, I've actually had several people that both people who are agents as well as people who want to be that have come and approached me to say, hey, you know what? I see what you're doing. I see how you're doing it. And that's different. And that's the right way to do it. Will you help me? So,
yeah, I know. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit and I was impressed with the way that you approach everything. It's way more factual based and way less like guesswork, which gives me good feelings because
I don't need you to trust me as the agent because I'm giving you the data. You can see what the market's doing because of how I present it to you, and that's done really well for me everywhere. And go figure, the world, we all make better decisions when we have better data. Right. In the real estate world, it's pretty common for an agent to give you a CMA or comparative market analysis, and they're going to give you 3 or 4 comparable sales and say, oh, these things are around here and that's comparable to your house. So this is, where your number should be. And that's not a bad thing per se.
It's like half. It's like half of the information you need.
It's a little bit of that data. And I just like to take a broader look at it. So I take all the sales and I can narrow it down as much as I want to for particular things, that are specific to your house. If I'm in Utah County in a master planned community that has 3 home plans, it's really easy for me to look at 3 other homes that are exactly the same floor plan and sold for certain prices and give you something that's going to be really accurate. in Sanpete, that's a bit tougher.
Yeah.
We
it's a
have
lot
to
more-
we have to spread out a little bit more in both distance and in price, and so in order to give you, I guess there's just a lot of subjectivity to it. How do you know that your agent chose the three best comparables?
Right.
You can get an appraisal, but I mean, in and outside of the real estate industry, we dog on appraisers too, because we, use, interesting that every time my appraisal comes in within a few $1,000s of the contract price.
Right, yeah.
and there's reasons for that. I'm not dogging on that. It's just identifying that's something that we look at and see. And it's like, well, but for some reason people trust it when it comes from an appraiser, and may or may not when it comes from a realtor.
Yeah.
I pull out all the data and put it on a chart, just like the one that I showed you when you were curious about the value of your home, that, hey, you know what, your home is this big, and these are where the sales are, and here's things that you could differentiate. We're coming up with a trend line for sold properties, not properties on the market. That's a good distinction. Just because someone puts it on the market for something doesn't mean you can use it as data that the market will accept. You have to wait. It has to have actually had both sides of the transaction, the seller and the buyer, that agree to that before you can use it as solid data. And then we look at where on that chart can we put your house and still fit within the data set that shows what the market is willing to accept right now.
Yeah.
So that's just one little thing.
It's awesome.
Yeah, process driven, data driven. Those are definitely some of my keys to success, and also to building trust and helping people understand that, I don't have to I do trust this guy from advice, but I can trust him in other things because I've seen places where he backed up what he was saying I was able to validate the stuff that he was saying with other sources. So now, if I had 1 point of trust, 2 points of trust, the more good experiences you have where you see that works, the more comfortable you are to trust someone in an area where they may not be able to give you as much information. So.
Yeah, completely agree. So this was a shift from employer to self-employed.
Oh boy, yeah, that's there's a lot of years as an engineer that I knew if I wanted to get rich, I'd either need to rich in quotes, right? Either need to,
if you want to build wealth.
Yeah, I'd either need to start my own business, or I would need to invent something that I could sell patents or rights to and that sort of thing. I've had a few invention ideas, one of which was with my boss at TCS. He had some patents that I ended up, building the monitoring systems that was related to some of those patents. He had another patent for a product that would allow you to order. Oh no, this one wasn't patented. This was an idea that he said we should patent, and we talked about it and didn't do anything. And then a year later, we talked about it again, and the idea was, and this was before smartphones, that in a setting like an arena or a stadium, that someone should be able to pre-order their food, or they should be able to order it from their seat. And we talked about different types of electronics that you might build and that have as each part of a seat, so that someone could not have to leave the game and have food brought to them, for example. Also, then those businesses could be run in places that weren't, prime areas of the concourse. You could be in some little room somewhere that is completely irrelevant and make people's food, take the orders, and then bring the food out to their seats, right? And so we talked about and articulated a bunch of things for this patent, or that we would turn into a patent. And then, it was his money. He was the financial backer, and then he had the original idea as well. And I just kind of helped him play it out, and even throughout the idea that, you might even be able to do this through your phone, whether it's like touch tone menus or, mobile web was just barely coming out on flip phones. Not to mention where we are with smartphones now, but just the idea that, you could do something like that. It would have been awesome. We would have made millions, but alas, we took too long to develop it. And when he saw something that's like, we better get on this now, then we went and did a patentability search and found that someone had patented the idea like 3 months before. So if we would have acted on it originally, then we would have had something.
Of course, that's how it goes, right?
We laugh at that stuff. So I haven't become rich by inventing anything yet. But I am now, and I avoided the idea of doing business on my own because I remembered when my dad did it. Like kids got called in to help, but like we were there filing papers at like 11 o'clock at night, midnight sometimes.
Yeah.
And these were school nights for teenagers, you know, and I remember how hard my parents were working, and a lot of things had changed. Like we bought a nice boat, and we had nice snowmobiles that we could drive in Fairview in May, you know, like,
Yeah.
but there was a lot of quality of life changes that came with him starting his business, but there was some awful lot of late nights, and I could only guess at how much stress my parents felt at certain times. And that was also something that, this was another change that my family felt. My mom went to work at that point. So she was no longer a stay-at-home mom, and she became a working mom. She didn't take any money because she just, you know, got what the business got, which was plenty and was great for our family. But that, I can look back on my youth and see that was a distinctive time between how we were raised before that and how we were raised after that, and how much we left to fend for ourselves and some other things that happened. So that was not something that I wanted to do either. It's like, I told my wife the same thing with the real estate stuff. It's like, well, yeah, but your mom also has her husband helping her. They don't have kids they have to worry about. Like, yes, you want to look at how much money she makes, but really you should divide it by 2 because it's both of them earning it, not just her. And all the reasons I had to push back. And I had the same fears of starting my own business because, frankly, I didn't want to work that hard. I liked that I got a steady paycheck every 2 weeks. I got, with Sub-Zero, I got 10% profit sharing, so a 10% bonus effectively that went to my retirement. Yeah. In addition to the matching of every paycheck, in addition to the cash bonus that I got at the end of every year, in addition to the health insurance and the dental insurance and the vision insurance, all those things that, you know, someone at my company, their main job was to help employees understand what they were getting. So if you were making $80,000 for your salary,
they'd add up everything else that
they would say, by the way, our company is actually paying around $125,000 to $130,000 for you as an employee, and you just don't see all of these things directly. I don't remember if they included like the other 7.5% of FICA taxes in that number or not. I don't know, but which, when you go out on your own, you have to start paying that too, right? So you have, like, there's all kinds of things that are obstacles to running your own business, and that was a scary thing for me. But, you know, when we got that impression again, they're like, hey, now's the time. And I wondered if that was an impression that was to get me up to Sanpete County, or if it was actually, no, I'm supposed to come to Sanpete County and I'm supposed to be a realtor, and this is what I'm going to be doing for the next little while. I actually had a part of my patriarchal blessing that told me that I would be successful in any honorable profession I chose. Oh. Never mind that I actually considered it. I wasn't sure about real estate agent fitting in the honorable part.
Right.
Based on the horrible experiences that I'd had, you know, sign a document that you're not going to talk to anyone else. You know, what else do we have? The signing things without building a relationship of trust. That was one thing that bothered me a lot. If you don't understand how the money's going, it does look like real estate agents are making a killing for the amount of work that they don't do, which is why so many people decide to become real estate agents, and why 90% of real estate agents don't renew after their first cycle, because they realize it wasn't quite as easy as they thought it was going to be, and they don't make any money, but they still have to pay thousands of dollars in associations and dues and subscriptions and all other kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's kind of funny that way. But yeah, I was pretty nervous about the idea of starting my own business and being fully responsible. I was very blessed with real estate because the way that things had happened in Arizona, you know, the house that we bought in 2012, we paid $185,000 for, and we sold it for just over 10 years later. I mean, Phoenix is one of those places where the highs are high and the lows are low. It's very polarized. Like Phoenix, Las Vegas, Florida, like those places pay for it hard, but they also reward for it hard. Our previous house that we had in Maricopa that we bought in 2007, mind you, we paid $235,000 for, and we sold it in 2012. We ended up short selling for $110,000. And so, like, that was we lost over 50%. I learned that's why you have primary mortgage insurance. I was looking at taxes, filing insolvent, for the short sale. We had actually tried to, when we bought the other house, because you could then qualify for anything at the time if you had a pulse. We bought our other house and we had planned to just rent the other one out. It was important to me not to become a bad debtor.
Right.
And we had actually budgeted to subsidize renting that other property for $400 to $500 a month. But in the market, as bad as it was in Phoenix at the time, we still couldn't get renters in even for that price because it was so cheap to buy.
Yeah. So, and that was big in that 2012 time frame. That was when we got into real estate, and so that's like my experience time frame was like 2010 to 2016. That's and it shocked me how much it affected, like the 2008 affected people hard in 2012, 2013, 2014 and stuff. Like there was still just tons of houses being brought on the market, a lot that were being short sold, a lot that were going to auction and not selling and things. It was just incredible how much that affected people.
Yeah, and that was definitely polarized in Phoenix. So
yeah,
we lost 50% on one, and then over the 6.5 years that we were there. And I say we lost, technically we didn't, because a mortgage insurance premium, that extra $200 to $300 you're paying with all of your payments, that was a payout of a claim. So when we short sold our house, the bank didn't lose a dime, which that's kind of cool too, actually, if you think about it. But yeah, so then when we sold, we did pretty well, and we had a lot of equity built up there, and having that equity is kind of what helped us get started as a real estate agent here. So I actually had my first sale in that month that I was trialing things. I helped someone buy a piece of land as an investment because they wanted to diversify out of the stock market, and so we bought a piece of property in a growing neighborhood in Ephraim, and today it's worth significantly more than it was 3 years ago. So even with things being as slow as they are right now, so it shocks me still how much everything has been continued to grow. Like it seems like when 2022 hit, 2023, and nothing really changed. It kind of stayed the same. Interest rates were up higher, and people were still buying. Home prices still stayed up. It kind of shocked me to see how much like the home prices stayed. But it's just like you're saying, even in Ephraim, it's growing. Yeah, and in Utah, that is not the same market as the Phoenix area. And that was, as I noticed those kinds of things, like, some prices dropped a little bit, with some of those heavy hits. But for the most part, things have held steady. Yeah. Even in Utah, like where no one wants to leave, and all these people that are homegrown don't want to go out and they want to stay here, and the demand is so high. A down market means that prices generally are staying the same instead of growing quite a bit. And so that's just, again, the nature of the market. And Sanpete has been another interesting thing, is, I've watched that since I moved here. So when we moved to Fairview, this is kind of a funny story too. I mean, we moved across the street from you at the time for where you were, and we moved into a rental that was 2,400 square feet, 4-bed, 2-bath.
Yeah, something like that.
You and a bunch of other amazing folks showed up to help us move in 2 waves with our 2 trucks, and I don't remember if it was you that asked how much we were paying to rent there.
Probably, because I've always been interested in things like that, and so I
told you, like, hey, we're $1,600 a month, and you're like, no, that is way too much. Like, there's no way. And I remember thinking, you know what, Morgan, I completely understand, but when we wanted to, like, there is literally nothing closer than Gunnison that we could move our family of 9 into. For period, like there was nothing. It was
just nothing available.
Like that
and
place,
that's why the price worked. So
there was mold in the window seals and things. A lot of maintenance was very far behind. And my mother-in-law said the same thing when we were looking at it. She's like, "You don't want this place, like, unless they do X, Y, and Z first." And we ended up paying like a $6,000 or $7,000 deposit to get into that place because I was switching from engineering to real estate, right? So the guy's like, you're moving from getting a steady paycheck every 2 weeks to full-time commission. Just another real estate agent that's not going to do very well,
Right.
And that first year was really rough for us. So we had to have that huge deposit in order to get in. And
Wow.
there was also someone else in front of us in line to get it. And I was using my negotiation skills bright and early to ask the guy, like, hey, like, have they given you any money yet? And he's like, they haven't paid a deposit yet. I'm like, what if we pay a deposit right now? And he's like, well, for a deposit from you guys, in order to do this and secure it, would need to basically be, 3 or 4 or 5, 4 months rent plus a security deposit, basically.
Yeah, right.
And they're your first month and your last 3 was how that was structured. So if they would have 3 months of us not making new payments to realize that they needed to do something with us.
Yeah,
and it's like, you know what? I understand where the guy's coming from. And we did it. And we had the money because we'd done so well selling our other home. And so that's what it was. That was our only opportunity.
Dang.
And
well,
so
I'm happy for it, because that's how I got to get to know you guys. But
and we just absolutely fell in love with Fairview. We were there for 9 months, and we ultimately bought our way out of that lease when we were able to find a home that worked for us. That we bought in Mount Pleasant. We were very, very sad to leave Fairview.
Yeah.
But Mount Pleasant's not too far away, fortunately.
It's a light year away.
it does feel like it that way, but on the same token, it's also that same light. You're closer to the schools and the swimming pool and the piano teacher and a bunch of things that my wife managed to be okay with it. And after a few months, is like, okay, maybe we can handle this. And we've learned that we build relationships wherever we go. Yeah, and so
it's hard to be like, you're not going to make it work somewhere, because everybody can move somewhere and find friends and find community and find stuff, especially if you're a member of the church. You can find your ward. It's easy to do that. But when you're someplace comfortable looking at that, you're like, there's no way that's going to work.
Yeah, why would I ever leave this, right?
Yep.
And ultimately, it worked out. We've been in that same house for a couple of years. Our grand plan actually is for that house to become a long-term rental, because there's so few long-term rentals that could support a large family. 3-bed, 2 baths are pretty common. They go for a standard of around $1,500 a month, give or take, depending on how new or old it is and
size and everything.
Size, yeah, exactly. So we have a goal to turn, when we make our next move, to hang on to that house and have it be a long-term rental. So I believe in investing in the industry that I am working in. And when I tell my clients, this is how you can make money in real estate, I practice what I preach. I flipped another house here in Fairview that ended up, honestly, we would have rather moved into that house than the one that we were in. But the way that circumstances went, that was another one of those things where it was easy to see the divine hand in, this is where you're supposed to be right now, and this is, all these things are going to work out for your good this way. And they have. The Powells now live in that house up off of Sealy Lane, and I think with the recent boundary changes, you probably know who they are.
No, I don't. They're not my ward.
No,
I'm in Mountainville ward.
Yeah, so are they?
They're in the Skyline.
That's right, they're on the north end.
So that highway, the Mountainville road, is where the boundary is.
That's right. Okay. Well, they're good folks anyways.
Yeah.
Have a great relationship with them.
Let's take a quick break. Is that all right?